He firmly shook his head. "No," she confessed to me, "but I don't know if I'm ready, or if it's her I even want." His gaze, soft, stared into her eyes. "I think I like someone else." And with that, all she needed to hear for some hope. He likes someone else? Could it be me? Her mind drifted off, and that bloody feeling in her throat was fighting to come back. She couldn't be in this room any longer, so she quickly sprinted to the bathroom, shutting the door behind her as she fell to her knees, coughing up and gagging as she struggled to get the rough, thorny flower out of her throat, blocking her airways. It was so hard to breathe and even get these things out of her body. She struggled more and more every single day, and it was slowly killing her. She didn't know how much longer she could take this, her body and life sore, straining with energy. Katsuki ran into the bathroom with her, kneeling down as he held her hair-colored hair back out of her face and away from the blood she was spitting up. Todoroki stood by the doorway, shocked, concern filling his face as he went pale. Seeing the girl he grew up with spit out blood and literal flowers, but not just any type of flowers. They were his flowers, the flowers his mother would always get him, red roses and white orchids. Yin cried as Katsuki held her close and tight after she just had thrown it all up. Todoroki kneeled down. "What's wrong with you, Yin?" His eyes looked sad as he looked into the small water bowl of flowers and blood. She sighed, and after a few seconds, he helped her up. The boys gave her some space as they exited the bathroom, and she cleaned her mouth and face, flushing the toilet. She wanted to cry, but stopped herself, as she couldn't even cry anymore. She walked out into the living room, and the two boys were sat on her couch. "Mario Kart?" she asked the two boys, grabbing the remote with a smile. She was just ready to forget. The boys looked at her and worried. "Yin, you just..." She cut off Todoroki off by putting her finger to his lips. "I know what I did, and I feel better now, and I want to play." She smiled, and Katsuki grumbled, picking up his controller once more. Yin smiled weakly as she grabbed another controller, handing it to Todoroki, and then she started the game, smiling as she was about to crush the boys. It had been a couple of days since the incident that happened at the haired-color girl's house. She let the two of her best friends see her in her most vulnerable moment. She felt so weak and embarrassed. She was tired of worrying her friends. She almost felt like she deserved to die. And she grew weaker and weaker every single day. But her parents were always there to help her through it. Occasionally, Katsuki and Todoroki as well. Yin had to stop going to school as she was way too ill to do anything anymore. It hurt to even walk around, as she couldn't breathe as much as she used to. The thought of death scared her, but the thought of losing her best friend and their memories scared her even more. As she grew weak and pale, she could barely eat anything anymore, struggling to swallow the rough foods. With her cut up and sore, drying throat, she could barely, and honestly, only drink water at this point. "I only have 2 days left," the girl thought to herself as she weakly tried to get out of bed. She knew she wouldn't be able to confess her love to Todoroki in these days. She had feelings and finally accepted the fate of her dying. It was better than never remembering her best friend. She sighed and coughed as she finally pulled her weak, trembling body out of her bed. she walked to her window, opening the curtains to let some light in. It was too dark, and just putting her in an even more depressing mood. She focused on her parents' beautiful garden, the flowers, the pond, and the small animals tearing in their fruit. She smiled lightly and weakly. How can flowers be so beautiful, but so deadly in my body? Her stomach growled as she knew she was starving, and she decided to try and eat something again, even though she failed every time. Slowly, walking down the stairs, when she started to get dizzy, looking for her parents, they looked at her with a confused expression. Are you okay, honey?" her mother asked. She only nodded as she finally reached the bottom of the steps and walked into the kitchen as she scanned the fridge for food. Her mother looked happy. "Are you hungry? I can make you something," she said as she rubbed her daughter's fragile back. Yin only nodded, agreeing with her as she knew she was too ill to make anything herself. As she went to sit down, she felt lightheaded, a rush of dizziness hitting her heavy as she then blacked out, only hearing the shouts of her father and mother yelling her name and trying to wake her up, with no success. They drove her to the hospital as fast as they could. It had been rough on her parents. They were sobbing and crying as they waited for their daughter to wake up, scared she wouldn't even have the chance to do so. They were accompanied by Mina, Katsuki, and Todoroki, who all felt the same way, though Todoroki didn't know the extent. He didn't know he was the cause of her suffering. It had been at least 15 hours since Ian had blacked out, leaving her to rest in the hospital bed as her friends and family waited for her to just open her eyes. And finally, she did. Gasps and cheers surrounded the room as she took in all the faces of her friends and parents, even the doctor. She smiled. "Hi," she whispered out hoarsely. Mina was the first to hug the poor girl, rubbing her head with tears in her eyes. Everyone was on the verge of tears. She saw Todoroki and Katsuki by her bed and her parents at their side of the room. She slowly sat up, alerting Katsuki, who was asleep on her legs, not waking up from the cheers, but from her legs moving. He groaned, and Todoroki, who was already sitting up. The both looked at her happy with tears and quickly hugged her for a short few seconds, then helped her sit up fully. "What happened?" she asked, them both trying to remember what caused her to faint. Todoroki was speechless, but Bakugo looked at her with a sad expression. "The disease, Yin. I told you to get the surgery," he said, looking at me and then back at Todoroki, who he could only glare at. Yin sighed. She guessed it was finally time to tell Todoroki. Now, on the brink of death, she slowly nodded as she realized she only had a few hours. Tears fell down her cheeks slowly as she looked back at Katsuki. "Can you please leave with my parents?" He nodded and got them to leave and shut the door behind him. She then looked to Todoroki and smiled, wanting to tell him what had been wrong with her fully, once and for all. "I have something to tell you."